Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest of my Mindful Meets. And today I am joined by Naomi Light. And Naomi is a couples and individual relationship therapist. Hello, Naomi.
Hello. Good to be here with
Lovely.
you,
Oh,
Brink.
it's lovely to have you on. Thank you so much. And Naomi is based in Petersfield, down, if you're listening from outside of the UK, that's down on the south coast, near the Channel in the sort of Hampshire, Portsmouth area. So down there where there's lovely, lovely beaches and the sea is at Naomi's fingertips, which is lovely. And Naomi and I met. I think we met through. Who did we meet through, Naomi?
Well, I think through networking.
I think we did, didn't we? That's right.
Yes.
And then Naomi very kindly invited me onto her YouTube platform, and we did a video. We had a lovely conversation. So here I am reciprocating, so that all you lovely listeners and also my YouTube viewers can have the benefits of Naomi's expertise and view and loveliness directly on the Mindful Eating Clinic podcast and YouTube channel. So there we are. Enough of my drivelly introduction. You are most welcome. And today we're going to talk about relationships, aren't we? We're going to talk about how we can perhaps get a bit more out of our relationships and what we might benefit from noticing and seeing and because you started, didn't you, working with individuals, but now you've sort of transitioned to working more with couples. So as an introduction, why don't you talk to us a little bit about your background and how you got into it, and then your slight shift from working now with couples, Naomi.
I definitely will, Laurie. So my background is I've always been fascinated in people. From a really young age, I just find people intensely interesting, and I love to find out what makes people tick. So I started this therapy work in 2017. I'd had a background working in the charity sector, working with a lot of both teams, but also clients, and then decided to get some qualifications so that I could offer more than just somebody's listening ear, could actually give people the tools to make their own lives better. And so that was 2017, but the journey with the couples work for me started when my own marriage was on the rocks.
Oh,
And
really? Okay,
we had some very difficult, really difficult years. One year where I think every day I thought about leaving. I had my plan, I knew what I was doing, and we were just desperately miserable, both of us, and really feeling like, hang on a second, I work with people, I work with mental and emotional health. Why can't I fix this? Why
yes.
can't he understand me? Why can we not get past these issues, the same things circling round and round?
And
And then at that,
that's such a classic, isn't it? Why doesn't he understand me? I mean,
yeah,
that's, isn't it? We hear that a lot. Yes, yes, yes. Carry on.
yeah. And then really it got deeper and darker when my own mental health started being affected badly by the relationship. So I was having panic attacks and just had this generalized feeling of the world is really hard, and had become quite increasingly isolated. So I had all the danger signs to myself that this was really not in a good way. And I'd resolved that probably the marriage was over and we were going to separate. I've got 3 children. So obviously that was it was really agonizing place to get to. But Nick was on his own journey and had reached his own point. So we got to this place of saying, let's get some help. We tried a few things, but we had never actually engaged a relationship therapist. And I sat in Jenny's office, and we were probably 3 or 4 sessions in, and I remember thinking, oh, if I could do for other people who are struggling what Jenny is doing for me, I think I would be made up.
Yeah.
But I knew that was, you know, that wasn't a quick turnaround. So I wanted to be in a place where our relationship was stable, and you know, it's very much not perfect. Nick and I will always be working on our love and connection and prioritizing each other in the relationship. But we talk about how we had our first marriage and it failed, and now we've got marriage 2.0. Ditch the marriage, keep the husband.
Yeah,
And you know, maybe
yeah,
one day we'll need marriage 3.0. You know, it
yeah.
goes through evolutions. We're very different people than the ones we were when we met uh,
How
17 years.
interesting. So you see it as almost like a project that has parameters, that has ways of working in the same way that we might have in our business lives, in our working lives. And actually it's a bit like moving from job to job. Your role might be slightly different, you're still the same person, but you realign and you have another look at what your role and what your responsibility and what your purpose is within that particular area, within that particular entity, as it were. I think that's a really interesting way of looking at it, because I think so often people will look to themselves as being at fault. And I know that in my own work, one of the ways to help people move on from unhelpful eating behavior is to distance themselves and to see the behavior as something separate from their own identity, which means that they can be more compassionate.
Yes.
So I'm sort of getting a slight sense that there's a slightly similar approach when you're looking at relationships.
Yes, I think that ability to separate the self from behavior or from relationships is absolutely essential and critical to the work that I do.
And
Yeah.
that moment when you decided to seek help, was there a sense that you wish you'd done it before, is my first question. And then my second question is, I wonder whether for a lot of people out there, actually seeking help is one of the most difficult things to do. It's kind of like, well, when do you know that you need it? You know, because that tolerance, I suppose, is different, because we get used to things, don't we?
It's extremely difficult to ask for help. I think wherever the personal help is needed, but I think it's like a double vulnerability when it's you and your partner coming together to seek help. So my sense of it, you know, a lot changed for us in a short space of time. A lot of things unraveled, and our mental health, both of us, really declined. So there was a lot of change going on, and I think had we sought help at an earlier stage, we may have learned some things, but I don't think we were ready, because I don't think we were willing to really do that deep level, root level change that we needed to, and to examine crucially the scripts that we had for relationships that had been the product of the families we came from and the expectations of our parents. And that for me was a life-changing realization. The first question that Jenny asked us when we were sat in her office was, in what ways are you a script fit for each other? It took me a little while to get my head around that one, but her understanding and the understanding of many relationship therapists is that we have a script. We're like actors on a stage, and the script has been written for us because we have a set of expectations through the experiences that we've had, through perhaps the societal norms, the family norms that we've known,
modeling from our parents and
family. Modeling, learned behavior. And unconsciously, it's never a conscious thing. Unconsciously, we look to find somebody who will fit our script and will play the corresponding roles that keep us with the feeling of, this is right, this is normal, it feels right. You know, so you're Mr. Right and you're Mr. Mrs. Right. Might be more to do with the script that you're trying to fit them in.
And I suppose that there's some safety in that, or there's some perceived safety.
Yes. Yes.
But of course,
Yeah.
it also then, I'm thinking that if we do that, we're not really understanding our own needs. We're not understanding ourselves and what we actually want from
Yeah.
a relationship.
Yeah.
In which case, it's more understandable that after a period of time, because we all grow and we all change, there are going to be some relationships where it's just not going to work anymore,
Yes.
because
Yes.
we start to know ourselves. And I think this often happens in middle age. I mean, it can happen anytime, but I think there's quite a sort of 40s and 50s moment. I mean, we joke about it, but we say midlife crisis kind of thing. But there is certainly something that happens. I think we have eureka moments. For me, I remember it was when I lost my grandmother and I was 40. And that sense of moving up the matriarchal sort of tree, as it were, the line, and looking at the rest of my life and looking at the relationship that I was in at the time and thinking, is this where I want to be for the rest of my life? And it was a resounding no. And that was quite a shock, because it wasn't bad. I mean, that's
Yeah.
not a very helpful word to use, perhaps, but but it wasn't. But I think I had definitely grown professionally. My children were older, so I'd got through the phase when they really, really needed me as a hands-on mum. And I just had this sense that I wanted more from a relationship. So I guess, going back to the point that we were discussing, if we are answering a script and if we're trying to fit into someone else's expectations, it's no wonder actually then that things can get misaligned. And sometimes, I suppose, if people end up staying together, sometimes it's a lot about luck and circumstances and growing in the same direction, I suppose, as well.
And perhaps a willingness to do the work of reflection and to be willing to accept your behavior as different to who you are as a person and your intentions. And I like the way you said, Laurie, that you knew in that relationship it wasn't bad. Because the trap that I see people falling to when they're doing the self-reflection, when they're realizing they're having this wake-up moment of like, hold on a second, this isn't what I hoped for or imagined when I said I do. When they're having that experience, the temptation is to suddenly make it bad and wrong and make it a bad choice that I made and a life I need to get out of. Whereas to be able to have the compassion to your former self, to understand that actually all you ever have been doing is the best you can with what you have.
Yes.
You made the best choice with the script that you were given, with
Absolutely.
the needs you had at the time.
Absolutely. And your idea of what you needed at the time, what seemed to resonate with you, and of course what you felt at the time. Love is such a difficult thing to define, that feeling.
Yes.
And I think sometimes it's only perhaps when we move on into a different relationship, perhaps sometimes, or when we have a regeneration of our existing relationship, that we realize that love moves, and that it sort of changes in terms of what we feel. But there's a strong comparison with the eating history thing, because there's a lot of compassion required. So it's interesting that you use the word script, because I look at somebody's food script, call it their food story, to see how they've needed to interact with food at certain times in their life, and to get away from blaming themselves for it. As you say, having compassion for one's former self is really crucial in order to be able to move on in all of these areas, isn't it?
Yeah. So to realize that, yes, this old script doesn't fit me anymore. Yes, I have the ability to change, and I can write myself. Brené Brown says, when we own our own stories, we get to write a brave new ending.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that at that point, the then the piece of negotiation is, and how about this other person in the relationship? Because they have the same changing, evolving personality and the same ability to remake the future, but I cannot control what they choose.
Yes.
And that for me was the point that I reached, which was a real death of my sense of certainty and future. And this was the marriage that I thought would last forever. And, you know, we were going to bring these children up, and realizing I cannot control Nick's choices. You know, incredibly for me, he was on his own journey and reaching a point of realizing, right, I'm done with this. I'm done with this. I'm not messing around with this, you know, ridiculous cycle of pain and hurt anymore. But I couldn't choose that for him. And as desperately as I wanted to, I had to realize that I can decide for myself. And on a good day, you know, I can make some good choices, hopefully some courageous ones.
Yeah.
But I have to free him to make his own choices.
And that's a
and
brave thing to do.
vulnerable.
You know, that's, as you say, that makes that person deciding that, realizing that, quite vulnerable.
Yeah.
You know, but then I guess if that other person turns the corner, then what you then have is two very committed people pulling in the same direction.
Yeah.
You know, towards making it the best that it can be, understanding that very few things in this world are ever perfect, but to make it the best, and with that level of understanding and trust and tolerance, and I guess it's also a sense of relating back to that relationship script of managing the expectations and sort of having a strong sense of that and one's own bill of rights. And so is that something that is really important to sort of agree together, to come together, to almost set it out? I mean, you know, like a contract in a way of sort of, you know, how is this project, how is this relationship going to move forward?
Yeah, coming together is the make or break of relationships. The work that was done by the Gottman Institute, which is where I've done my training in relationships, into couples that made it and couples that didn't. They created a lab, and couples were invited to come and stay, and then every interaction was not only recorded but then coded for what kind of interaction it was. And the results showed that where couples eventually separated, there was a coming together, and whether that's not just coming together for a big sit down talk, but any kind of interaction between them, any kind of transaction between them, coming together to look in each other's eyes, coming together with a text message, a smile, holding hands, an embrace, a kiss, any kind of coming together. It was a 33% success rate where they would actually come together rather than one of them bidding for the other's attention and getting ignored or getting an angry response. And the couples where they went on to have meaningful, lasting relationships, they got it right 86% of the time.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
There's your difference. There is a difference. So it turns out that our willingness to come together, our willingness for our partner to have our attention, for us to spend the time, spend the energy, open up, talk, go out, create ideas, create plans and expectations, and you know, big serious dreams that we write down. It's our willingness to do all of those things that are going to either enable or not the longevity of our connection.
Yes. And I suppose to add to that, even if it's just sitting quietly on the sofa and you're watching something and you know that you're both engaged in that thing in the same way, and maybe there's a hand holding going on, but there's just something, and you know that you're both in a particular moment. I mean, that is a coming together as well, isn't it? That's a shared moment. But I think what struck me then was, you know, how actually, if we open our minds to it, how easy it is to be receptive to an approach. It's like with all behavior, that split second, we have a choice. We have a choice which pathway we take. And if and we will know that person well enough to know the signs. And I remember from some NLP training, this idea that thought and behavior from the subconscious mind always has a positive intention. In other words, you know, it's coming from a positive place within us. And if we're open enough to it, it's not difficult to receive something with a smile if we choose. We just take 5 seconds out to hug that person back.
Yeah.
But I guess that what happens in relationships is that this sense of, well, I'm in a certain place and and this is how I think and what I feel in this particular relationship. Therefore, I cannot let my guard down, or I have to sort of persist with this persona that I've decided I have for myself within this relationship, which sometimes I guess is protection. I'm not quite sure, you'll be better able to say, but I think we can establish this identity for ourselves, which almost starts to live on its own, even though we might want to respond differently. That sort of gets in the way and blocks us, doesn't it? And stops us throwing all aside and just breathing and going, absolutely, let's just have a hug about it.
Yeah, Laurie, you're exactly right that the building blocks of any thought process in any emotional pattern, they're all the same. It's just when it comes to relationship, it's like you've got a bigger lever and all of these things get magnified. And it's what we call the science of attachment. It's because we are, thanks to our mammalian brain, our mammal brain, we are pack animals. And our biology places an importance on connection and attachment. And in a really big way, that primary sense of connection we have with our partner. So this works both in our favor in that if we keep turning towards them, coming together with them, that is going to increase the neurobiological connections that we have in favor of that person, the trust, the expectation, the shared meaning, and the memories that we have with that person. It's going to magnify our sense of wanting to be with them, positive attachment to them. However, it also has a reverse event in which we can magnify our sense of threat and danger by how much meaning and importance this relationship had to us. So if I perceive that perhaps my partner's faith has changed in the middle of the argument and I am suddenly unsure of what's going on with them, I'm much more likely to read rejection, aggression, or disapproval from my partner because my brain is so sensitive to those things, and the amygdala will fire off its, cortisol and noradrenaline very, very quickly. And that over time creates what we call in my work a negative perspective, which is, there's that facial expression again. Before when he or she did that, it resulted in some crosswords. Oh, he always does this to me. He's always so critical and rejecting, and there's nothing I can do that's right. You see how this is magnifying?
Yes.
Then we call it going universal, that little word always,
yes,
or never. And
yes.
Suddenly I have these huge compelling reasons to be afraid, to back off, or to criticize and accuse. And I'm building a sense of mistrust and disconnection and being misunderstood, which becomes the negative perspective I have on the relationship. And when you find yourself in that place, it doesn't happen overnight. You need to have a number of these moments that you dwell on in a negative way. But when you find yourself in that place, you have a road of turning towards your partner positively over a period of time in order to restore that sense of natural attraction and attachment to them.
Yes.
It wasn't too technical.
No, I was
I
absolutely
wanted to
riveted.
give
Yes.
you
No.
from my point of view, to tell you why exactly what you said, why the things that happen inside us do, so important to the work of relationships.
No, I think it's crucial because, again, in my own work, if people understand where the messages are coming from and why they might be there and why they might be reacting to a certain situation in a certain way, it actually starts to dilute the power of it. And then they can start to break it down and see it for what it is and put it to one side and go, okay, but the reality is, this is my husband, and he's asking me for this. I have a choice whether I respond to him or I decide not to, So I think understanding, knowledge, and that sense that we have power over our behavior in spite of what we might have in our heads, and that we can act differently, is actually what everyone wants to hear.
It's really good news, actually.
It is. It is.
And for your listeners, Laurie, if there was one thing that they could go home tonight and choose to do to favor and support their relationship, it would be to listen. And to listen, not to agree. Because often we kind of listening for, how do I pose my opinion so I can get my partner to agree with me and see it from my point of view.
Yes.
No. We're not listening to agree. We are simply listening to understand.
Yes.
To become curious about how my partner thinks, about the way the world looks through their eyes, about how the experiences they have had have shaped them. To ask open questions and to really listen to the answers.
Yes.
It's so simple but so hard to do. So spending even just 30 minutes a week in meaningful listening activities, it makes a marked difference on the quality of the connection that two people have.
That's really,
so listening to understand is there's one thing I could send people away to do, it would be that.
Yes, and that sense of really listening and perhaps reconnecting with that person as an individual. So not just my husband, wife, partner, but actually, if I was meeting this person for the first time, what do I get from this person? Can I sort of take away the role that they have in the house and the fact that she leaves her socks everywhere or whatever it might be, that I'm actually, as you say, listening, really trying to understand the emotional connection with what's being said and the opinion, and also sitting and listening and thinking, what can I take from this? How can I use this? How can I remind myself about maybe why I chose that person in the first place? Because we know, don't we, with children and time and changes in life, that we can forget why perhaps we chose that person. So you said about listening. So, oh my gosh, time flies when you're enjoying yourself. But before we came on, you also said something that I think would be really, really useful for people to hear, and that was this idea about noticing. And I suppose it maybe sort of comes back slightly to that point of, well, when perhaps might I need to address something, either within the relationship ourselves or with external help? What sort of things might be helpful to start noticing and observing, and just have a think about what we're seeing? What would you say?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose noticing is a form of listening to yourself. And, I often say in my work that the most important relationship we have is the one we have with ourselves. And that forms the foundation of all our other relationships. And, and for people where they know it's not perfect, there's, they know that there's work to do, but they're really struggling to know how to engage their partner or feel really hopeful about the future, then learning to listen to yourself and being your own partner is always a positive choice that you can make. So I think I'm a very great believer in listening to your body, so that, you know, not only in an eating and behavioral nutrition sense, and listening to your hunger and your other desires, but listening to the sensations you feel, listening to the emotions, and listening to your behavior, you know, the ways that you're speaking about yourself. Then the voice inside your head, is the voice inside your head your cheerleader? Is it your, you know, your confidant and your compassionate friend, or is there a critical, cynical voice inside your head who finds every opportunity to jump on the things that you did and you know, be
Or
critical
that other
towards
person did, you know, that's
or
your
that other
trust.
person did. Yeah,
Yeah.
the two do go hand in hand.
Mm.
And you know, and a really simple way to listen to yourself is to journal. I think everybody should have a journal or have a season of journaling, because when you commit to paper in whatever form that is, whether that's creative journaling or scrapbooking or bullet points or writing out longhand, you know, today I da 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 da. When you commit it to paper, you get to do that thing we talked about of distancing yourself, and then you can read back. Because reading back over your journals, I don't know if you've ever done that, Laurie, but it's very compelling and provoking, sometimes confronting, to read back and see it, listen to yourself talking, and notice the patterns and notice the changes and see how far you've come, but also see how difficult it was for you.
Yes.
And that's a form of listening to yourself, where you can start to notice, where am I not free to fully express myself? Where am I not free to have needs and to ask for them to get met? Where am I suppressing parts? Where am I projecting? Or where am I getting frustrated and angry and annoyed with other people? Where, you know, if I was to practice more patience and kindness with myself, perhaps I wouldn't need to, you know, vent and release that on other people. It is possible to have even those kinds of quite you know, penetrating or profound insights just through the act of mindful journaling, listening to yourself, and noticing yourself with compassion. I'm amazed what my clients sometimes come to me and say they've had these realizations. Oh my goodness, where did you get that from? That's so well thought through, and that's so insightful and so helpful as an anchor point for supporting your growth. So I believe we all have that capacity. We all have that wise mind inside. I saw a diagram the other day somewhere that was your emotions and your logic as a Venn circle, and where they crossed over, the word wise mind was written. You know, that sometimes we say, well, logically, I know I should just get over this. Yeah, good logic. But if you're not paying attention to your emotions and how you feel about it, then you're missing a big part of that ability to listen. But if you just know this is a reaction, it's not based in logic equally, then it needs some kind of recentering back to your wise mind.
Yes, wonderful. Yes, my brain is imagining this, the crossover and how the two work together. And so sadly we need to bring our conversation to a close, but what would you say to people who are in a relationship that doesn't seem to be working very well, but they're reluctant to seek help? Is there anything that you could say to them to encourage them perhaps to think about it, to do that?
Well, I think what I would say to somebody who's stuck in a relationship that doesn't seem to be working is give yourself the gift of time. The temptation can be, because that's such an uncertain place, you know, if you find yourself there, and I've been there, if you find yourself there in a, you know, in a partnership that is falling apart, or where there's stress and conflict and anxiety, or betrayal and cheating, that's so seriously uncertain. You know, the chaos, the stress levels are huge. And what our brain wants to do is to just make a decision, to bring some certainty and security. And, you know, the temptation is that's it, I'm out of here. And whilst that does create some certainty, it can be a false sense of certainty, because you've had to leave behind and betray some essential part of yourself to leave the relationship. And so if there's one thing I could say, if you know you're stuck in a place that's not good, it's not healthy for you, is offer yourself the gift of time. Because just saying to yourself, okay, I don't know what's going on, I don't know what the future looks like, but I can just do today. You know, I can just make some choices right now. I can just do this week. I can speak with a friend. I can write in my journal. I can find a professional. I can read a book. I can self-soothe. I can do something for today that gives me the gift of time, because it takes time to change our thoughts and our emotional patterns. Some of these things will have been going on for a very long time, even before the relationship started. And to be able to have that precious gift of time to say, I can continue to walk in a different direction. I've just changed my trajectory and I'm walking in a different direction, means that with a little bit of time, I end up in a very different place, a place that seems impossible right now, but with the gift of time, I can realize it. So that's it. Is that okay?
Yeah, well, yes. And then through that giving of time and that sort of processing of where someone's at, if then someone wants to seek professional help, where might people be able to find you, Naomi?
Yes. Yeah. So naomilight.com. I just encourage people to have conversations with professionals like me. There are lots of different ways of helping your relationships. There's different disciplines, different tools, and different perspectives, and each therapist brings their own unique set of those to the table. And finding a fit with somebody who you like and trust. Yes. I say to my clients, they should feel excited and energized about spending time with their therapist or working with a professional. I shouldn't feel heavy or like this is something I have to do, but something I've been drawn to. I feel confident this is going to benefit me, because it's not easy work. You know, you're going to have to go where perhaps you've been instinctively avoiding going, and you have to face the vulnerabilities that's intrinsic to relationships. And having a partner to do that, and a professional partner that you trust, is really important. To have conversations, ask all the questions, sense whether this is somebody you can trust, and look up. You know, there's lots of great websites. You know, directories, Psychology Today and Nursing Directory, different registered bodies. The COSRAT is the body for sex and relationship, and they work with people who've reached a level of training and expertise that gives confidence, and I think that's very important for this kind of work.
Yes. Great. And all of those links we can put in the blurb, can't we? So that people can, anything that you think is relevant for people to enable them, as you say, to make a decision whereby they can be with someone. Because, you know, it's as you say, it's a very, very personal, it's a very soul bearing, it's a very vulnerable place to be at times. So we need to feel 100% confident and comfortable, and that our metaphorical hands are being held all the way to get us to the best place for us, and that wherever that might be. But it's that journey, isn't it? And having that professional guidance and that steering to read the map, to help you over the fences, to help you through the ford, you know, whatever it is that you might be encountering, but that tour guide, if you like, that person to sort of steer you and ask and encourage that dialogue and that coming together that we've spoken about during our conversation. And then to go back to the top of the conversation to prove that, you know, there are some marriages that might need a new iteration, but with that iteration, they are better and stronger than they ever were before.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is a
Yes,
lovely place to finish,
yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I would want everybody to know, because I didn't know when I started to struggle, when Nick and I were really conflicting. I didn't know that you had the option to change your relationship entirely, to create a new one from the inside out, but stay with that person. And that's been a game changer for me.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you so much, Naomi. What a lovely conversation. Absolutely lovely. It's been a joy, and I'm sure that my listeners and viewers will have taken a lot from that. So I'm very, very grateful for spending the time today. And anybody who thinks they can hear something in the background, that might be Herefordshire rain banging on the roof of my house, which
Oh,
suddenly
it's raining with
started.
you.
It suddenly started halfway through the podcast. So
Oh.
that's what that was. But anyway, so Naomi, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure.
Laurie, thank you for having me. I've loved it.
Thank you, everyone. I'll put all the connections, the details, the links in the blurb, and then you can get in touch with me or in touch with Naomi if you want to explore anything a little bit further.